Fantastic panel. Thank you very much. We have time to entertain a few questions of our United Nations for Sustainable Beef panel. Fire away. I will call on you. Nancy Lobby in the back. Oh, we have someone over here. I'm sorry.
Dawn Robinson from ProForest. It's mainly a question for Jose, but maybe other people have something to share as well. I noticed that in Mexico, you have a lot of dairy members. In fact, the president of the organization is from Lala Dairy Company. I'm just wondering, was that a conscious decision to keep the definition of livestock broad and include beef and dairy, or did it happen sort of without planning? And has that been an issue for some of the other roundtables?
In fact, like different than Brazil, like you in Mexico and Colombia, you cannot separate like livestock for beef and livestock for dairy. They're complementary. I mean, it was like who is going to lead the effort, and started with the Latin American Conservation Council meeting in Cancun last year, and the challenge was thrown. So we have to do what Brazilians are doing, and the Lala say, well, we assume the challenge just for this opportunity. But once we meet in Mexico, we have a clear idea that this sector is dominating or is prevailing in different regions. So in Región Lagunera, which is the desert of northern part of Mexico, this is more dairy in some specific region, but meat producers also, and also the poultry and industry and the whole livestock sector is going to be represented, need to be represented there. And we don't really push on that dairy sector is going to lead, but just as a transition phase, they are going to lead in order to build the institutional framework. Then we will see who is going to assume the responsibility.
Dairy is a very important part of our beef supply chain, becoming increasingly important. Dairy have a stronger political voice in our country than beef and lamb, so we try and work as closely as we can with our dairy cousins. Water is going to be a more difficult challenge, but we're working with them as much as we can.
From the Canadian perspective, we've just come through our annual general meeting, and the Dairy Association was present there. As part of our life cycle analysis, the dairy industry in Canada had already done a study, and so it was not our intention to duplicate anything that's been done, but in fact collaborate with the Dairy Association, because the number of cows that are within the system are very important to us. So they've been very much a part of how we've been structured as well.
If I can just add to that, from a global dairy perspective, the dairy sector, because I work there also, has the Global Dairy Agenda for Action, which was an initiative established in 2009 and reborn last year in the Dairy Sustainability Framework, very similar to the beef roundtable. We're not going down the standard route, but we recognise sustainability is important, and we also recognise that we need to work closely with our colleagues in the beef sector. I've just been talking to Rory at this conference about making sure that this GRSB is part of the dairy approach going forward to make sure we are aligned as much as possible.
In Colombia, you have seen, being a starting point, we have decided to keep it as livestock, so meaning dairy and meaning beef cattle. Also, you must take in mind that large amount of the population in Colombia is dedicated to what we call dual-purpose system. It's a system that produces milk and also produces meat at the end of the day. So in the future, if we need to split it, we will be happy to do it, but by the timing, we'll keep us livestock.
In the U.S., obviously the dairy industry is very important to the dairy beef complex. As we look at what we're trying to accomplish, we have quite a bit of, the gentleman from Colombia here would talk about the peace process. We have that focus within the beef sector right now as a big first step in trying to align 630,000 beef producers, but the beef dairy complex is very important. We do a lot of work in the area of beef quality assurance that connects to the dairy segment of the beef dairy complex. So they will continue to be an area that we would engage, but that's not our first step as the first phase of this initiative.
Nancy Lobby from the World Wildlife Fund. I've been involved with the Canadian Roundtable and the U.S. effort, so I'm familiar with the involvement of the cattle producers and obviously with the associations. But I'm curious, in Colombia and Mexico especially, it wasn't clear to me, are the cattlemen associations involved in the development of the Roundtable? And if so, or if not, why not? And if so, what is their role in the development of the Roundtables?
Hi. I would say that it's very first stage of meetings in Colombia and Mexico. I would personally participate in both. And I don't know, if you keep in mind that we started to discuss in Brazil in 2007, we agreed in 2009. So on common goals or objectives. We've been discussing deforestation issue for more than 2 years. So I could say that we made advance. We are, as my colleague from Colombia say, we are creating trust between each other. It's not easy to put dairy and beef in the same room. It's not easy to put. So we are, GTPS is one stage of maturity that we can talk openly with any of the components of the supply chain. We are struggling in Mexico to agree whose farmer represents who, whose government institution is going to be represented there, because there are 3 or 4. And environmental issues one, development issues another. So it is, we like to build up, and we are not in such a hurry that we have to build up. First of all, the institutional framework. We like to invite as much as possible institutions that have interest to participate, to develop, and to help to have this kind of conversation and build some common goals to one strategic, let's say, objective on livestock.
In Colombia, as you have seen, there were projects from the National Cattle Federation going on sustainability. And because of that, and because FEDEGAN, that federation, does not represent the whole of the cattlemen in Colombia, but around 60 to 70%, the government decided to set up the Roundtable, trying to reach, with the issue of sustainability, all the cattlemen, all the cattle ranchers in Colombia.
Have another question? Got the mic, speak, brother.
Roger Cady from Elanco. This is specifically for Brian. Anybody else can answer, but for Brian. Brian, as I was listening to you speak and all the reporting and all the different organizations that have reporting guidelines, I started to think about who industry reports to outside of agriculture. And there's the Carbon Disclosure Project, there's the Global Reporting Index. Have you had any discussions about tying in with their any of their requirements for reporting that goes on in industry outside of agriculture?
Yes, but not in the beef sector. In the dairy sector, certainly, because we recognise that many of our members or those we work with in the dairy sector are reporting through those mechanisms, and what we want to try and do is align with those as much as possible. I don't think any of us in any reporting mechanism development want to create a bureaucratic nightmare for those we work with in the sector. We want to keep it as efficient as possible, but as meaningful as possible. So certainly, I wouldn't say we're a long way down that track, but we're certainly building infrastructure through databases that's able to pull in data from other reporting mechanisms at the moment, should that be possible.
Yes.
Hi, Rasmus Ramgassen from the University of Cambridge. I have a question for Dr. Gallego. I hope I pronounced that not too badly. Do you see, how flexible do you think the ranchers that you represent are? Because your sort of plan to halve the area of ranching over a relatively short time, I would presumably require many of them to stop being ranchers and to produce other agricultural products or move into different livelihoods. And secondly, how has the uptake of those silvopastoral systems that you described evolved?
Well, the pledge is huge, and the time scale is very short. But because of that, the government decided to take that pledge and help the farmers to accomplish that. Because it's from the political point of view, it's a very optimistic pledge, but in reality, if we allow only the cattlemen to reach those goals, they won't never be able to do so. So because of that, it's a huge opportunity for the government, because it goes linked as well with the COP, commitments that we have. And it will help a lot, to decrease GHG emissions. As you saw, having livestock spread all around the country, our commitment to decrease those emissions is not only huge, but is very difficult. So this is a wonderful way to help the farmers in order to decrease those emissions. The second question, I couldn't understand it properly, sorry. Right. There we have in Colombia CIPAF, that is a center for alternative production systems in Colombia that has been, I would say, worldwide leader in the developing of different arrangements of silvopastoral systems in Colombia. The point is that is only a tool. That couldn't be the tool, for giving sustainability to those livestock systems. And it's a tool for a special niche of farmer, because it couldn't be implemented for small farmers, because it does need land and it also needs some financial input, to establish those arrangements. Okay. There is a niche for that technology.
One final question, Fernando.
Thank you, Cameron. My question is to Mr. Lindsay, and maybe Terry, if you want to help him, is about the standards. We are talking about different standards. You mentioned more than 130 that you are studying the SI platform. And we are also facing regional differences, because the challenges that we have in Brazil are not the same that you have in Mexico, in the US, or New Zealand. So is it achievable that a private company could find one standard to source, for example, beef worldwide, facing those differences? And is there a danger that that kind of standard can turn into some trade barrier for some countries? I would like to hear from Terry about that. What's his vision about it, since we are both, exported-oriented production?
In terms of finding one standard, I'm a firm believer, and I said it through the sessions yesterday, I'm a firm believer of local solutions to local challenges. And I can tell you the experience we had in dairy. We went and spent almost $500,000 on an independent study about whether we should have a standard for dairy, and recognizing the diversity in the production systems, and recognizing also we want to demonstrate continuous improvement. The consultants, the globally recognized set of consultants who did this, came back to us and said, don't lose sight of a standard, but actually at the moment what you're better off is designing a framework that allows local solutions to local challenges. And I think that's an important message we learnt and we've adopted in the dairy sector, and it can apply also in the beef sector. With our principles and practices, we define the principles of sustainable agriculture. How you achieve that principle needs to be developed on a local basis, because as I said yesterday so much, this has to be meaningful for the whole supply chain. It's not about ticking boxes for the market. It's about helping businesses get more efficient, and that's what sustainability is all about to me. I'll leave the trade barriers over to you.
I'm going to offer a personal view. My vision, Fernando? My vision for New Zealand is very much geared towards focusing on feeding what we can do, which is 30 million people. So people can talk about the 9 billion challenge. Great, good luck, and we'll meet your standards. I would like to see our industry focusing on what we do, and we should be focusing on quality. We can't feed the world. We're never going to be able to feed the world. We'll continue to do the good stuff, the public good stuff, as you've seen in the last few, in the series of slides over the last 2 days. We're always going to be working in that. We're going to be working in the Five Nations Beef Alliance. We're going to be working with our partners. We're going to be doing all that good stuff in the pre-competitive space. But I hope one day we succeed in doing what we do well. And we're doing it in the lamb, we're doing it in wine, we're doing it in seafood. And one day, hopefully, we'll do it in grass-fed beef.
Let's thank our panel.